The Basin.
The Basin.
The Basin. It's always good to have people just come and join us, because the Basin is where you wash your hands, you engage people, you have fellowship. And we do see whoever, maybe you fell into this podcast, maybe you're looking somewhere and you get to find this amazing couple and you were like, this is interesting. We just want you to know that we're inviting you over into our life as friends, as a community, and washing our hands together to kind of unite with you wherever you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So welcome to the Basin podcast by Boss and EJ.
Yeah.
Awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, you look good.
Thanks, baby.
That's good. I have good eyes. It's always good. Sometimes they're like, "How did you find this lady? What happened?" I'm like, "What do you mean by I'll find this lady? Like, how did she meet me? You know, I'm a good-looking guy too." All right, so we want to go into another topic, and I know we've really focused on relationships. We've talked about a couple of topics on soul ties and connection and how to know the one. So today, which is interesting, I mean, there's nothing to hide that you and I are people of faith. The faith is a key part of who we are. And it's such a big deal because that's what connected us, right? We had that strong faith value. But one of the things we've also noticed is the way people use, the name of God. So when we say we're people of faith, we're believers in Jesus. We love God. And we're passionate about what we stand for, but we're also professionals and other things as well. So one thing we hear a lot is when people always use the term, God said this, God said that. And when it comes to relationship, people say, God chose my wife, or God said, you are the woman for me. Yeah. So if a man comes up to you and say, God said, you're my wife, I would love to know what your reaction to be. And also for me is when...
A man comes to me and says, God says I'm his wife?
No, but so let's from a lady perspective.
Yeah.
So let's assume you're not married.
Yeah.
And the guy comes in and say, God has spoken to me. God has spoken. You are the woman for me. And that happens a lot. We've seen that. We've heard that. We've seen people use gospel for different things, right? At what point is it that we are using the name of God in vain? We're abusing that name. And is it okay for a guy to go to a woman, or a woman to go to a guy and say, God said you're my spouse, or you're my partner?
I think it's not okay at all. And I know it's used a lot, and I don't like it. Because if someone tells me that God said I'm their wife or whatever, I run away like, you're crazy, get out of my face.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the Bible says between 2 or 3, God confirms his word. So if God spoke to you, God needs to speak to me. And the fact that you feel bold enough to come tell me that God said you're like, nah, I don't like it. But that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people think it's a nice way to tell a girl that, but it's not.
Yeah, I honestly do think that the name of God is used so frivolously.
It is.
In a very disrespectful way. Everybody say God said this. A guy just on the side note, he got arrested and invested in crypto, and he was saying, God said I should have crypto out there and Christians need to invest in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I'm really... It's amazing how God is so patient with us. But the point I was trying to make when it comes to relationship is, if God chooses your spouse, and then you're making God responsible for the issues, personality issues, emotional issues, psychological issues that you haven't dealt with, and everything that comes when you're with this person. So if somebody comes in and says, God chose this person for me, for that reason, you have no right or a place to now say, God said, or you say, I want to say goodbye to this person. Or I want to separate, I want to leave this person. Because immediately from the point when you use the word God, you've put absoluteness to it. You're saying, no matter what it is, this is what God has spoken. And God doesn't lie. I get concerned when people say God chooses your spouse. because there's an aspect of God's sovereignty over us, God authority, God's reign, God's power. We do, but there's also an aspect of free will.
Absolutely.
I believe that God has given us as individuals the right to think, the right to make decisions, and the right to have free will. And anything that denies you your ability to think for yourself and the free will to do the things that you're supposed to do, and knowing that, look, certain things, yes, we should rely on God, but a lot of times people don't say, God, should I shower or not shower? Should I drink water or not drink water? Should I eat or not eat? But when they don't want people to refute what they're saying, they come in and they say, God said. When it comes to the situation of relationship, it's very sensitive, because if you're putting God in it, you're holding that person tied to believe that it's God said. But God gives us free will. He has created us to make decisions.
I agree.
So the people, so for example, what are you going to say?
So as you're speaking, right, I'm thinking from a very biblical space, right?
Yeah.
And this can go into like Bible study very quickly, but I want to try to not make it go into that route.
Yeah.
But I do believe that God can tell you to go marry somebody. He did that to Prophet Hosea. But the way people...
To marry a prostitute.
To marry a prostitute, yes. God can say that. He has said it before, and he can do it again. But when God gives instructions, right, he's never not going to tell you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Go do this because I'm about to do this. Go do this for, you know what I mean? It cannot just be God said I should marry you, boom, and expect the next person to listen. There's always a directive, and there's always a direction being given.
Absolutely.
So I do believe God does that, but the frequency with which it happens right now, where God said I should wear this color of dress, God said I shouldn't talk to you, God said, I'm like, how can your life be so messy and yet God is speaking to you?
Yeah. And
it doesn't correlate at all.
And how is your life so messy and you keep saying God said?
God is not an author of confusion. It's just that's just my point.
But tying it back to just relationship overall is, I mean, I've seen situations where I've heard stories of older parents where they've gone to a lady and you know how they got married. It's kind of like how I met your mother. Yeah. And go on the first date and say, you know, I see the woman and say, you're going to be my wife. And they got married. Right?
Got married?
Yeah, I've heard stories like that. Like
and the girl did not run away from
the guy saw the lady. So somebody was sharing, a friend of mine, and the man saw the lady and said, just like, you're going to be my wife and nothing is going to stop it. You know? So that's a level of confidence, right? I think that's beautiful.
Right? If you say you're going to be my wife, I think,
that's so sweet.
That's
He's
cute.
joking. Let's see how far we go with this.
Yeah, but it didn't come like God said.
Yeah.
You know, if he comes in a little, it depends on how he's presented. If you come and say like, girl, you're going to be my wife, I'll be like, oh, look at him. He's talking. Okay. Yeah. I'll find it cute. Like, he's confident.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, God said you're my wife, we're like, God has not spoken. You didn't hear what.
No, he's not. I don't think it's God speaking to you. I think it's something else. You must have drank. You must have something in there.
Crazy person.
You got spiked, you know, something in your water, you know. Maybe it's Detroit water you're drinking. No,
it's the way it's presented.
No, just joking
like
here.
Like,
it's true, and I think that is confident. There's a difference between having confidence, but when somebody goes in and say, you know, there's a confidence that gets proven over time, and there's a cocky one that's just an arrogant dude that's probably told so many other guys that guy you don't want to take seriously. But those that I do think that use the word God, it shows really a level of weakness.
Absolutely.
You know, in terms of like, it shows that you lack confidence. So instead of going to somebody and saying, God said this, it's good to know, like, I want this. And believe me, God is not against your will. He has given you free will.
Absolutely.
Only if he counters it. And I love what you said about Hosea, prophet. And it was funny because God was telling him, marry this woman, but it was an allegory because God was trying to reflect the people that Hosea lived around. He said, you guys are absolutely like rebellious prostitute people. You have a bunch of idols that you worship.
Yeah.
But you used him as a tool. But it was the best example I guess God could have used because it was probably the only obedient prophet at that point.
Yeah. God gives directions.
Yeah.
Right? And God honors his word above his name. He's not an author of confusion. He gave us people, we give us free will so that we can make decisions.
True.
Right? I have the power to choose who I want to marry. I can't say God said, so that when something bad happens, like Adam did with Eve, the woman you gave me, and then you not say. So I don't think that's
not. Yeah,
no.
you're becoming
I think
like
it's a cop out. People deal this day and say, "Oh, God said this, God said that." I just feel like it's a weak excuse, and we need to just stop doing this. It also shows the heart posture of the person who says it. If they say it in a very frivolous way, you don't hold God in high. You don't hold God in high authority in your life. For you to come in and say God said something just because you are feeling that way,
and there's a disregard.
You feel drawn to this person.
Yeah.
You want to be with this person.
Yeah.
So you let your feelings become God in your life and call your feelings God. You know what I mean?
And you look at it too. Like there's so many factors that comes with relationships, right? There's the God factor, which is good to have that in your life. That's always great. But from just the surface level, you have cultural elements, you have backgrounds, right? In America, we have, the sociology, you talk about low context, high context cultures. You have countries that are low context, some countries are high context. And you look at culture in America where personality is very different. People are very driven and they are very, they want to just prove themselves. They want to achieve the next thing.
Yeah.
And they bring that into relationship as well. There's a lot of celebration of just luxurious life and living good. So sometimes you can be a believer and, share the personality that is not going to lead to a successful marriage because of the things that you value the most.
Yeah.
Right? So your belief in God doesn't mean a guarantee that you have everything in order. The goal is God to train that aspect and you yourself be willing to learn. Because you look at what we call the global south, which is, the global south, like low context countries. So global south will be developing countries or developing world or nations that are second world and third world countries.
They're called developing south.
So in political terms, political science terms, they call it global south.
Global south.
Yeah, global south. So it's kind of like looking down at anything that's on the south side. Seems to be that in a way there's a negative connotation. Yeah. But you look at how whether they're religious or not, right? They respect family values.
Of course.
So you can have an absolute stranger get married to each other in those countries. Whether it's erotic love, eros, maybe it's a filial friendship, or if it's agape, unconditional, whatever reason it is. But there's one thing they're committed to. We're going to be with each other till we die. Yeah. And we are not going anywhere. Yeah. There's that level of commitment. Yeah. There's that level of till death do us apart, which is different in the Western world where
there's no commitment.
There is no till death do us apart.
They say it, but they don't mean it. When the going gets tough, they start running.
When the going is that tough,
sit into the toughness and fight. Yeah, like
no, absolutely.
You gotta fight together.
You gotta move it together. You gotta be committed. It's kind of like when you're reading that stuff. It's like for better, for worse, for richer, for poor.
It's fun to say.
It's funny now they've changed it. So there was somebody that was saying for richer to richer.
No, for richer, for poor.
For richer to poor. In sickness and in health, till death do us apart.
Yeah, it's a life.
It's a beautiful thing too, to be in your 80s and still holding your hands and probably not in the same mental state.
Yeah, I have to say that there can be a lot of Christians who are listening to us and will disagree. Because you and I know a lot of Christians who say this. God
Yeah.
said I should do this. The miniature day-to-day task. You're praying and saying, I'm gonna ask God. I think to that I would say, go to the Word. Go to the Word,
Yeah.
the Bible, not the world. Hear me clearly. Go to the Word, and since if you are one of the believers who pray and say God said I should do one task throughout my day versus two
Yeah.
tasks, and seek God face. The same God who tells you not to wear this jacket and not to eat this food. I mean, I think God does that because I know that the Lord has given me
You can, the Holy Spirit leads you.
those things, those day-to-day tasks. You
But
cannot
they-
even take
they-
a step without saying God said.
Yeah.
I would say go to God and really, really read the Bible
Yeah.
and see the context with which God moves.
Yeah.
If you want to know God's character and His attributes today, He has never changed. He will never change.
He will never
so if you want to
change.
know God's character and the way God moves, you would know that by studying the Bible.
By
Truly
getting
studying
into the
Bible.
Word.
Yeah, see how He has moved in the past in people in similar situations as yours. That will give you a picture of what God is doing and not doing today. Secondly, I think I've said this before, God cares about the individual, but God cares more about the body of Christ.
Yeah.
So if you think about God is saying this to you to marry this person, so how does this tie into the body? You know what I mean? Because when God told this person to marry that person, He was trying to share a picture of the
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
right? If God is asking you to marry this person, the question is not, God, tell me why. How
Yeah.
does this tie? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For God to give you an instruction, there's
Yeah.
got to be a why behind it.
There has to be.
There has to be. So you
Yeah.
can't just be like, oh,
God said.
I can't talk to you anymore. We are done because God said. No. You don't want to
There has
talk
to be a reason for it.
You can't be like, oh, God said I should marry you. Are you sure it's not your feelings that you have placed into the position of God?
We always talk about just the simplicity of faith, the simplicity of the gospel. That it's not that complicated. And as human beings, I'm sure God wants us to live our lives freely with no condemnation. And of course, be in alignment with His word, but not obsessed to the point where you don't have ability to decide right or wrong. It's great. I think we're going to be going towards the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Talking about, hey, at what point does God decide? At what point do you decide?
Yeah.
So it's good to have you, and we love to hear your comments and with feedback on this podcast that you feel about this. Maybe you get a little agitated and you're burning and saying,
Pissed
"Hey,
off
you're
at us."
boss, what are you guys talking about, EJ?"
Yeah.
But we love to hear and think it's meant to be dialogue and conversational. So that's the point of the Basin.
It goes back to what I was saying, right? Agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.